Liverpool nil, PSG 1. Of course, a complete flip of what we saw last week in the first leg of this Champions League tie. And I would also say that the match in general was quite different. Last week, PSG were very dominant. This week, the possession was much closer. The chances created were much closer. The shots on goal were all much closer. And this was because both teams had spells in the game where they were on top. We also saw, in moments, quite a transitional game. So why did all of this happen? Why was it such a different game from what we saw in the first leg? Well, because Liverpool were much more intense at home than what they were away in the first leg. You can see very early on here, Slot demanding that his team presses high up the pitch. And this was something that we saw. Like I said, in the first leg, PSG dominated the ball. Liverpool sat off really deep into their low block and allowed PSG to have possession. That was not the case in this match. Instead, Liverpool were looking to squeeze much higher up the pitch, particularly when the ball was on the PSG right-hand side. So PSG are trying to play out from the back here. What we would often see is Liverpool, actually in moments, being really aggressive with their shape. So Diaz would come inside onto Marquinhos. We've got Jota on Paco here. We've got Salah on Mendes. And even at times, Andrew Robertson is going to come all the way forward to join the press in this moment here to try and help Liverpool win the ball. This is a much more intense approach to the game. And actually, as a result, they had far more turnovers than what we saw in the first leg. Liverpool winning the ball high up the pitch. So why didn't they win? Right? Why didn't they control the game if they were pressing so well? Because whilst they did press well in moments, it was also a little bit inconsistent, particularly with Andrew Robertson. Yes, in moments he squeezed high and connected the press well, but there were other moments where he was simply too late. And when you've got a quality technical player like Hakimi, you give him time and arrive late to the press. He is just going to play the ball around you and make it look a little bit easy, and PSG certainly did that in moments. The other problem with the Liverpool press was that whilst they were aggressive on the left-hand side, at times, on the right-hand side, they weren't really. There was a big problem down here. If PSG went to the right-hand side initially, right, they played to the right-hand side and draw Liverpool over, and then work the ball back to the other side, there was a real problem in this fact that Mo Salah would get drawn narrow, but he was actually 1 versus 2. He was dealing with the centre-back, but also the left-back. And again, PSG have so much technical quality that if you give them the spare man like this, PSG do work the ball around you, and Nuno Mendes is a powerful ball carrier, someone who can step forward with the ball, drive into these areas, and this was a real problem for Liverpool. They couldn't connect in these moments. And why was that? Why couldn't Liverpool connect in these moments? Well, because Arne Slot does have a slightly cautious approach to the match of football, right? And in as many moments as possible, whilst he tried to be aggressive at times, his default almost is to be a little bit safe and to have a +1 at the back. Now, what does a +1 at the back means? Basically, if PSG are attacking with 3, Liverpool have got 4 at the back. Let's say PSG attack with 4, Liverpool will have 5. They'll always try and have the extra player in deeper positions because Slot doesn't want his side to get caught out. He doesn't want his players too high up the pitch. But this does cause problems, and you know, you're playing against a PSG side here, which has amazing technical ability. We spoke about this last week, just how technical this PSG side is, the way these players rotate and move position. Last week we were talking about it in the final third. This week we're going to talk about it a little bit deeper. The likes of João Neves and Matinha rotating in these deeper positions, causing all sorts of problems for Liverpool. So Gravenberch wants to follow Fabian Ruiz, for example, but when Ruiz is making runs this way, it drags Gravenberch with him, and then Matinha might drop deeper to bring Szoboszlai with him. And it just opens up space. And this was something that PSG did really well. They manipulated Liverpool, plus Liverpool were just a little bit too passive. And we can actually see this on the goal. It starts down the left-hand side. Mohamed Salah doesn't get close enough to Mendes, who is able to play the ball. But we can see the movements in midfield, dragging the Liverpool players out of position. As this happens, Ousmane Dembele then drops off into the space around the halfway line. And in terms of the passive Liverpool back four, they're nowhere near it. Van Dijk in particular is miles out of position, and it makes it far too easy for PSG to get on the turn and carry the ball forward. So this is why we saw a different game to last week, because Liverpool were trying to be more aggressive, but they still weren't aggressive enough for me, and it cost them. Now, interestingly enough, we actually at times saw something similar up the other end of the pitch as well. So when Liverpool were playing out from the back, PSG tried to be aggressive, but there were moments where this didn't work. And again, that's because at times PSG played with a +1 on the back line. So Liverpool would go into their front 3, PSG would defend with a back 4. They're keeping the extra player. The difference for me, though, was the intensity of the forwards for PSG, which a few years ago isn't something that we would have said, but Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, Barcola are all brilliant pressers. They work really hard off the ball, and they do a lot of work which I feel goes unnoticed in this PSG team. They're really good with their defensive intensity. But I think Ousmane Dembele in particular deserves a lot of credit, because in this game, he was very often actually almost 1 versus 3. It's Dembele against Konate, Van Dijk and Alisson. And I think Liverpool were, again, a little bit cautious in their approach. I don't think Alisson took enough risks on the ball to take advantage of this overload here. But also, Dembele just deserves a lot of credit. He did a lot of really good defensive work. And, you know, let's say Van Dijk's got the ball here. Dembele's going to come and press him. Obviously, the pass is clear, right? The pass is to Konate. But Dembele worked really hard to make sure that that pass wasn't played too easily. He was covering these yards. And it makes the life of everyone around him a little bit easier, because it means that PSG can sort of lock off one side of the pitch like this. Dembele's pressing intensity means Konate has no time to make a good decision, and suddenly PSG can lock on. So Barcola's on Trent, and I think in midfield really is where this not even only this game, but this tie was won and lost. PSG just looked a little bit too good really for Liverpool, and that's saying something, because this Liverpool trio has been amazing this season. Gravenberch and Szoboszlai in particular, some really good performances from them, particularly in the Premier League. But in this game, they were just overrun. They couldn't actually cope with PSG. The tenacity, the bite of the PSG midfielders, and of course, I mean, their technical quality is there for all to see. But Liverpool really struggled to get to grips with that, and you know, when the ball was going into these areas, they're trying to play inside the pitch. PSG were too good for them, and they could overturn the ball, and then they're going to have transitioning moments. And, you know, when you've got Ousmane Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, Barcola picking the ball up, looking to counter-attack and attack a back line, that's really, really dangerous. Now, PSG, realistically, didn't actually ever quite make enough of those chances. But again, in terms of expected goals created in this game, they had a lot of really good opportunities, PSG. They got into some great positions, had some great moments. They were just lacking that last bit. Alisson again made a couple of really good saves. And that was the problem for Liverpool. This isn't to say that Liverpool played badly at all, by the way, because they had moments where they could get on top. I think Slot's idea to invert Trent, to sort of overload Fabian Ruiz, was a really good idea. And what this allowed Liverpool was direct, quite easy access to Salah. I like that idea. I think that was clever from Slot. The problem was, again, just over the tie, the individuals from PSG were better. I think we talk so much about tactics and overloads and finding spaces. Sometimes you've got to look at the key matchups on the pitch, right? And, you know, in this game we saw Barcola against Robertson. I think Barcola was the better player. We saw Kvaratskhelia against Trent, which was actually a really good battle, I felt, but Kvaratskhelia just always felt that he could do something. Hakimi against Diaz, I think Hakimi won the battle. Mendes against Salah, once again, like we saw in the first leg, Nuno Mendes won this battle, and we've spoken about it already. PSG also won in the middle. All in all, this was another really fascinating match between these two teams. For me personally, I don't think it was quite as entertaining as what we saw last week. I thought last week had a little bit more to it. I think in this game, there were moments where quality went missing. We saw large parts of the second half where Liverpool took control and were more aggressive and could grab the ball. And in those moments, PSG did struggle. They struggled to play through the pressing moments. So I think both teams were a little bit inconsistent with their actions. Both teams could press really well in some moments, and then in other moments the press would completely fall apart and both teams could play through. We saw both teams moving the ball through midfield at times, but also both teams losing it in those areas. This was a really good clash against two teams. I just think in the big moments, tactically PSG were just that little bit better, and I think more than anything, they understood their job a little bit more. They understood the plan, and they knew how to execute the plan, importantly. In the pressing moments, Liverpool players looked a little bit unsure. They were just sometimes a couple of yards short, and you can't be that at this level against a team this good. As for PSG, on the other hand, they were sharp, they were on it. Even if the shape wasn't always right, the players were executing, the timings were good, they were arriving into the right moments. And then again, I think in the big moments, I think PSG just had too much quality, particularly the technical quality in the middle of the park. I mean, Vitinha, just an unbelievable footballer. I think he's gone under the radar for a few years. I'm really hoping that this year for him is the year that people kind of sit up and take notice of how good this young man is, because he's one of the best central midfielders on the planet in terms of press resistance, ball carrying, ball progression, passing the ball forward, but also keeping the ball for his side, ball retention. Defensively, he does a lot of the nitty-gritty work. I think he's an amazing footballer, and he had a great game, and he had a great tie. And I would say that for PSG overall. Really close between the two teams, but for me, PSG were just a little bit better tactically and also individually. And when that happens, 9 times out of 10, you are going to get the win, even if it eventually comes down to the luck of a penalty shootout, which PSG were, of course, able to win. Donnarumma in goal plays a big part in that. It was enough for PSG to get through. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do in the next rounds. is this the season that PSG finally win the Champions League? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But apart from that, we've finished for this video. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.